Hello, my name is Alibi Honest. This is my first ever video essay, and unlike most video essays, this is one on something I have made. My first ever ARG, Redwater. Now, Redwater was made for my senior project in high school, where the probing question was, how can I create a compelling story about an insane asylum through the medium of an alternate reality game? I believe that knowing this is important to understanding design choices I made to the story. Redwater was a game I had wanted to make for a few years. As someone who had been involved in the ARG community as a writer and voice actor, I've also been interested in game design for things like Dungeons & Dragons and escape rooms, so this was a perfect project for me. I wanted to make my dream game. At this point, I ask that if you have not played Redwater, you should go and do that. But if puzzles bore you or you want to skip the game experience of Redwater, I've also released a video compiling all 13 videos into one in tandem with this one for your viewing pleasure. This is your last chance to leave and look at Redwater before I tell all my secrets. Okay? Are you ready? Let's start at the beginning. Even before my senior project began, the name of this ARG was already set in stone. Redwater was originally a concept for a Dungeons & Dragons spell my twin sibling Too Bad and I were working on a walk one day. But eventually the name gave so little to work with, inspiration-wise, that we scrapped all our ideas. But the name stuck with me and I used it for this ARG. At one point I used it for a short story, but kept the name. The logo, on the other hand, was a lot newer. A few friends of mine claimed it looked like a canteen, or a flask, or even a manhole cover, but it is supposed to be a stopwatch, where the hands extend out of the face and create an X. I was working with a few ideas of each video featuring a different variation of the Redwater logo, but scrapped this idea because all the other versions looked silly. Okay, what about the characters? The protagonist is Margaret Kirkbride. The first name spelling is rather unusual. Typically it's spelled like Margaret, but here I changed the spelling with the word regret instead, combined with ma, like my, to say my regret. The family name Kirkbride is in reference to this guy, Thomas Story Kirkbride, the guy who made a famous layout for insane asylums. In fact, this document found between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock says a lot about Margaret and the place where Redwater is set. While some sections are blotted out, a lot can be gleaned just by reading it. The Insane Asylum 13 Meadows repeats the number 13 quite a lot. It is in the address, the phone number. The street is also an anagram of Redwater Rising, and if pronounced the right way, it sounds similar to that too. The Insane Asylum is located in Bethel, Massachusetts, and Margaret is from Fairview, two locations that do not exist. Margaret is unemployed, had an older brother, a father, and a mother, and her brother was in an accident when Margaret was 19, and it was implied that her mother died when Margaret was 6. There's something here about frozen water and her childhood home as well. Pulling back the curtain on this document, this is exactly what it says. Margaret loved to explore the woods around her childhood home in Bethel, Massachusetts with her brother Oliver. They built rafts out of branches to sail on the lake nearby their home and constructed sleds to slide across the frozen lake in the winter. Throughout her middle school years, Margaret involved herself in the theater club and played a few minor roles. She maintained her interest in the club even after she forgot her lines on stage. When Margaret was 19, her brother Oliver died from a car accident. The circumstances of what caused it is unknown. Police theorized it was because of a moose that managed to stumble away, but this hypothesis was never proven. Regardless, this devastated Margaret. She immediately dropped out of college from lack of motivation and settled in a small, cheap apartment on Elm Street in Fairview, Massachusetts. Margaret Kirkbride claims that she never had friends, only up until Oliver died. Margaret Kirkbride claims that she has daily encounters with squirrels prior to admission. Danielle's full name is Danielle Warren, and the warden's last name is also Warren. I chose this name because it sounded similar enough to warden, implying their similarity. There isn't a lot here because there's no record of Danielle or the warden, since they are both hallucinations created by Margaret. Oliver, on the other hand, is not a hallucination. Oliver only appears 3 times on screen, in voice.
Hi, Em. It's me. Oh. You can see me, can't you? You can't? I did not know it was dark.
And in a puzzle. Text from him is shown in 10 o'clock Nightmare. Before I talk about each video, I want to go back to the lore found in each Google Drive file. The first important one is found between 3 o'clock Medicine and 4 o'clock Carousel / 5 o'clock Shadow. Margaret is allergic to penicillin and cashews, which is in reference to the allergies my twin sibling Two-Bat has, and small furry mammals. Huh. Additionally, Margaret has fears of vomiting and ghosts. Margaret also gets chlorpromazine, a drug commonly used to regulate schizophrenia. In 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, there are several audio files which can all be put into a spectrogram to reveal things. In 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, Danielle and Margaret have a discussion about Margaret leaving. Margaret says that she is leaving in 2 hours, aka 12 o'clock Redwater, and Danielle asks for Margaret to send postcards and to visit, which seems oddly important to Danielle. Margaret also talks with a nurse and repeats lines said by Danielle, showing that Margaret has been influenced by her. The warden doesn't know what's best for me is a really important line. In 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock, Margaret's admission document is shown. Margaret's primary symptoms include disorganized thinking, depressive thoughts, difficulty sleeping, hallucinations, and delusions. It also mentions that her mother died of a stroke at 43, same allergies and phobias as before. The phone call initiates players into playing the game again, starting at 1 o'clock rising. Hello, this is the 13 Meadows admission office. How can I help you?
Hello, good morning. My name is Margaret Kirkbride. I see things that other people don't see. They say I'm crazy. I need help.
Okay, dear. When is a good time for an evaluation?
I was hoping for 1 o'clock this Wednesday.
The Our Staff document contains the names of a lot of my friends, but also reference and subtle jokes, like W.D. Gasper, which refers to the ambiguous character W.D. Gaster from Undertale, G Sharp, the musical note, B reading as in exactly what it says, and J Robertson, a character from the BEG, an ARG that I'm helping to produce. When it comes to puzzle design, my favorite puzzle is the chess one in 2 o'clock Danielle. The key is given in 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and the order of which the pieces move is given in the video. When making this, I used a physical chessboard to imagine how the pieces behaved and the rules of the puzzle. The videos are where the main content is. We'll go in chronological order. A car drives by the insane asylum in 1 o'clock Rising, which is actually part of a full clip. The rest is used in 12 o'clock Redwater. A mistake was made during filming. I forgot to include an entire sequence where Danielle enters the room. I realized this in editing and replaced it with an on-screen text. This was the best I could do without getting the actors back together to fix this mistake, but I'm personally okay with this. I'll explain why in the end. 2 o'clock Danielle was a very interesting video to film. The actress who played Danielle had never actually played chess, and I was relying on chess positionings like knight f6, for example. I needed to use simple terms like right horse moves away from u2 to the left one, followed by some delay for the actress to figure it out and leave me room to edit out my voice in post. There were occasions where pieces teleported to positions in the first draft, but I caught them. The video says a lot about Danielle and her intentions. Margaret plays defensively, and Danielle plays offensively. But when Danielle makes a huge mistake called a blunder, Margaret capitalizes on it and becomes more confident and captures a lot of pieces. This allows Margaret to form a trusting bond with Danielle, as she had helped her feel confident in herself, enough to defy the warden's orders in 4 o'clock carousel. Danielle's dialogue here is also very important, alluding to her history on the stage and lying at night looking at the stars with her brother and father.
If there is one thing I will miss during my time here, is the stars.
These histories are actually Margaret's, but she does not reveal that. Danielle also encourages Margaret to leave the asylum on her own and go to the city and live a full life outside of the insane asylum. 3 o'clock medicine was really simple. I used my school's cafeteria for the metal table, and the Google Drive link shown was tested in a smaller ARG I had made to practice with puzzles. Lore-wise, Margaret is dreaming up the conversation with Danielle, and from 2 o'clock Danielle during 3 o'clock medicine, meaning this video is taken from the perspective of the nurse. 4 o'clock carousel. This was hard to film, logistically. I had never done stage combat before, so I had help from the actors. This was something I really liked about this group. All the actors had experience on the stage, and I was novice at filmmaking. So we all worked together to achieve my vision. Do I wish we had practiced more? Maybe. Am I still happy? Of course. The 13-minute long video that is 5 o'clock shadow was originally supposed to be over 40 minutes, but I needed to shorten a lot of things in order for the editing program to be happy. This video was meant to be in an isolation room, where Margaret isn't fed and touches some outlets that are not safe.
Ow, shoot!
Danielle has some lines here, around 5 minutes in, telling Margaret to be strong and brave. Oliver makes his first appearance almost 8 minutes in, and speaks very faintly. Danielle brings Margaret out of the isolation room. 6 o'clock numbness was another tricky one to film. Too Bad was pushing me on a skateboard to act as a dolly. The QR code was introduced quite early, if I'm being honest, but it was the first time we had gotten the skateboarding timing to work, so we kept that take. 7 o'clock Daydream was a fun one to edit. I enjoyed putting in the sets of 3 digits and the 1 red herring scattered around. The sudden change in tone was also satisfying. This is the first time Oliver is on screen. The actor who played as Oliver was also a playtester and was helping me with behind-the-scenes work. This was at the end of our filming session, and we were all getting exhausted. But again, these are people who have acted for a while, so maybe it was just me getting tired. The name 8 o'clock sharp was said by the warden in 7 o'clock Daydream, which I thought was clever. This main bulk of the video, the conversation between the warden and Margaret, was filmed in just 2 takes, one for each side of the shot reverse shot. It was here where Margaret needs to make a choice. Please skip to this timecode if you want your own interpretation of the story. If Margaret listens to Danielle and throws out the medicine without consuming it, then Margaret will follow the track of the players, following an endless cycle of admission into the asylum and trauma that comes from it. If Margaret chooses to take the medicine, she is thus rejecting Danielle and choosing the warden to escape. This unlocks a new path, one leading to recovery. You see, Danielle and the warden are hallucinations created by Margaret's schizophrenic mind. Danielle has been playing as an angel, dressed in white and making Margaret feel good and strong. But this comes from ill intent. If Margaret escapes, then the overstimulating world of the city keeps Margaret from healing, keeping Danielle alive. The warden, on the other hand, has been playing as a devil, doing morally wrong things to Margaret but for the purpose of getting her better. The warden knows that medicine and staying in the asylum will actually make Margaret better. While this is inaccurate to how insane asylums were, this thought process is why some people go to psychiatric hospitals to get help. The warden is keeping Margaret in 13 Meadows because it is safe. Okay, that's the main lore. Let's continue with more behind the scenes. If I am being honest, I have two favorite videos, and this is one of them. 9 o'clock Electric. This was fun to film because Too Bad and I got to mess around in our school's workout room at dusk with a flashlight, and the sound design was the best so far. I'm also a little biased because this was the first one I had finished. Honestly, even after making this video, I had nightmares about it for a few days from the editing alone. "10 O'Clock Nightmare" is my other favorite video. This was actually the first scene I had thought of for Redwater. This was in a dream with Margaret standing off against the warden and then running away, but with a different friend of mine playing as Margaret. Margaret's costume in this dream included a red beanie and a baseball bat. The running sequence shown at the end was actually me running down a hallway and then tripping purposefully because a side effect of chlorpromazine is dizziness. The microphone that belonged to the actress who played the warden didn't work very well. I asked her to record lines on her own. It's a long story for how I made this decision that I don't want to get into. But I thought it was fitting enough to use in this scene and in 12 o'clock Redwater. 11 o'clock The Warden is my least favorite video. It was not executed well, and the QR code on the suitcase is barely usable. I needed to include a link to the QR code to the Google Drive file. It was really embarrassing, but I did what I could. If I'm being honest, 11 o'clock The Warden was the most unnecessary video in the game. I am not happy with it, but it is history. I will talk more about my feelings in a bit. 12 o'clock Redwater is the final video in the loop, and that means a lot. As I mentioned before, the same clip of driving by the asylum was used in both this video and 1 o'clock Rising. Danielle mentions postcards again and requests for Margaret to visit. And she's outside with no supervision? There is a secret 13th video. I'm going to discuss it briefly. Skip to this timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled again. The last video is called 801 Triumph. It is in the title scene sequence, 2 new lines are added to the bottom. And in Triumph, I will say I was cured that day. Margaret leaves the asylum happy and healthy, and Danielle tries to control Margaret one last time. She rejects her. She drives off, and 3 years later she recounts her time in the asylum and writes the Ode to Redwater. This was the last video I edited, marking the end of a section of making this game. It was on to playtesting. Those are all the videos. Let's talk about music and sound design. I used a lot of royalty-free sounds, which I never saved where I got them from, sorry. 5 o'clock Shadow and 9 o'clock Electric use the most sounds and to the best effect, in my opinion. A lot of the songs use the same 2 leitmotifs, which I call Danielle and the Warden. A lot of songs are slow or fast versions of these songs, like Departure, Shadow, Medicine, and Oliver. The iconic title screen and My Pride and Joy roll credits are made entirely from these 2 leitmotifs. There are 2 notable exceptions to this rule, Numbness and Nightmare. Numbness was actually made before Redwater began for a scrapped short film of mine for a moment of tension, and I brought it back here creating I Can't Feel Anything and Panic from it. Nightmare is actually a derivation of The Warden, but adding a lot of random chords. The Corridor is a slowed down version of Nightmare that I actually prefer. Within the soundtrack there are 4 songs that never play. Ode to Redwater, Celebration, Lowest of Lows, and Margaret. Margaret was originally called Goodbye, but I liked the idea that the slowed down version of title screen was the song that represents the protagonist. The Redwater official soundtrack represents an important period of my music creation knowledge, which was just to trace over existing sections of songs I liked and build from there. Since then, all the music I have made has been 100% my own, and I am proud of that. Let's look at the blooper reel I made many months ago. I think it shows a lot that went wrong when filming, and some funny stuff that happened. Roll the footage. This is a test video.
Oh.
And it could be funny if this went in the bloopers, and if this audio manages to get captured, then it'd be pretty meta in it.
To where I could dance and play and live without bearing the burden of reality. But time catches up to you, especially if you were ignorant. Every good thing.
Margaret! Send postcards! I'm sorry.
Say a smile for the camera. Okay, come on. I have a few thoughts about Redwater after making it and another smaller one called Amor Propria. My first issue was done well in Amor Propria, the title screen. In each video, title screen plays for over a minute and shows the exact same thing, only changing the name of the video. It is really boring and unnecessary and, more importantly, too dark to read the text. Redwater Mahogany, as I like to call it, eventually became Redwater Rose, as I brightened the logo in future use cases of it. In the Redwater video movie released in tandem with this video, each title screen is heavily saturated so the audience can read the words. In Amor Propria, I heavily cut down on the words in the title screen, and the length was significantly shortened. As mentioned before, I forgot to film certain clips while filming. This is not a good mistake to make, especially in a film career. But as a novice filmmaker and video editor, I did the best I could to fix my mistakes, and I believe this mistake adds character to the game. Similarly, some scenes were rushed because I was worried about time, and I did not have a lot of takes to use. It was my first A or G after all. I was bound to make a few mistakes. For the class I needed to make this project for, I was required to write a reflection letter once the project was done. Throughout making Redwater, I never lost motivation in making it. Some of my peers had slowed down production of their projects, while I never did. I had a lot to manage: planning, puzzle designing, scheduling, and video editing, to name a few. I kept documents for my shot list, costumes, props, and puzzles. This administration was my strongest part. I was incredibly organized. After almost a year since the release of Redwater on May 6, 2024, I still look back on the game as the best creative project I have ever done. It took a lot of planning and researching to make, and it was all worth it. I am really proud of the message I had thought of, that everyone is on their own journey to recovery, and that the one person who has control of their own story is themselves. That is what Redwater means to me: control of one's own future. And that's a wrap! I hope you enjoyed learning about all the secrets behind Redwater, and maybe learned a thing or two about producing ARG, or at least how I go about it. Thank you for watching. Redwater Rises.